Hell's Angel found her, half-conscious in his territory. "Don't move, Bella, I've got you." The evening sun cast long shadows across Jack's weathered hands as he turned the key in the garage door lock. Another day of oil changes, brake repairs, and the steady rhythm of metal against metal was coming to an end. The familiar scent of motor oil and grease clung to his clothes, a smell that had become as much a part of him as the Marine Corps tattoos that marked his arms. His shop sat on the outskirts of town, where the bustling streets gave way to quiet country roads. It was just the way he liked it, peaceful, away from the noise and chaos that reminded him too much of his time in service. The solitude suited him, helped keep the memories at bay. Jack's calloused fingers brushed against the small photo frame on his desk as he gathered his things. Sarah's smile beamed back at him, frozen in time. 10 years had passed since he lost her, but some days the weight of her absence felt as heavy as it did the day she died. He tucked the frame into his desk drawer, a daily ritual that marked the end of another workday. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now, back to the story. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple as Jack walked to his truck. The old pickup had seen better days, but like everything else in his life, it was reliable and sturdy. He climbed in, the familiar creak of the door a comfort in the growing darkness. His thoughts drifted as he drove, remembering the way Sarah used to tease him about his fortress of solitude, as she called the garage. She'd always known how to make him smile, even on his darkest days after returning from deployment. The memory brought a slight curve to his lips, but it faded quickly as he reminded himself that those days were long gone. The road home was familiar, every bump and turn memorized over countless trips. Here, in this quiet corner of the world, he'd built a life that made sense. No complications, no surprises, just the honest work of fixing what was broken, even if he couldn't fix himself. Jack's truck rumbled down the gravel road leading to his house, the headlights cutting through the growing darkness. As he rounded the final bend, something caught his eye. An unusual shape on the roadside. His military instincts kicked in immediately, and he slowed the truck to a stop. There, in the dying light, lay a crumpled figure. Jack's heart began to pound against his ribs as he threw the truck into park. He recognized the delicate form of a young woman, her dark hair splayed across the gravel, her body unnaturally still. Without hesitation, Jack leaped from the truck, his boots crunching on the gravel as he rushed to her side. His trained eyes quickly assessed her condition. She was breathing but barely conscious. Bruises were forming on her visible skin, and her clothes were torn and dirty. As he knelt beside her, recognition hit him like a physical blow. He knew her face. Everyone in town did. This was Bella Monroe, daughter of one of the wealthiest families in the area. He'd seen her pass by his shop occasionally, always looking somehow both elegant and uncomfortable in her expensive clothes. Now, seeing her injured and vulnerable, Jack felt a protective instinct surge through him, one he hadn't experienced since his days as a squad leader. He leaned close, his voice gentle despite its natural gruffness. "Don't move, Bella. I've got you." Jack's arms trembled slightly as he lifted Bella from the ground. Despite his strength, he took extra care, treating her like fine china that might shatter. Her head lolled against his chest, and he could feel her shallow breathing. The evening air had grown colder, and she shivered in his arms. Getting her into the truck proved challenging. He had to maintain his gentle grip while maneuvering the passenger door open. The overhead light flickered on, revealing the full extent of her injuries: scrapes along her arms, a bruise forming on her cheek, and dirt streaked across her once pristine clothes. "Easy now," he murmured, more to himself than to her, as he settled her into the seat. As he reached across to secure the seatbelt, Bella's eyes fluttered open briefly. Her pupils were dilated, unfocused, but filled with fear. "They're chasing me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please, help!" Her words slurred together before her eyes closed again, leaving Jack with an uneasy feeling in his gut. He shut the passenger door quietly and hurried around to the driver's side. The truck's engine rumbled to life, and Jack glanced in his rearview mirror. The road behind them was empty, but something about Bella's words made the darkness seem more threatening. His fingers tightened on the steering wheel as he drove, checking his mirrors more frequently than usual. The drive to his house took only minutes, but it felt longer. Every shadow seemed to hold potential danger, and the usual comfort of the familiar route was replaced with a tense alertness he hadn't felt since his military days. Bella remained unconscious, occasionally making small sounds of distress that made his heart clench. Jack's modest house came into view, a simple one-story structure set back from the road, surrounded by old oak trees. He pulled up as close to the front door as possible, not wanting to carry her any further than necessary. The porch light cast a warm glow as he carefully lifted her from the truck. Inside, he headed straight for the living room. The couch wasn't fancy, well-worn leather that had seen better days, but it was comfortable. He laid her down gently, grabbing a throw pillow to support her head. "Where—" Bella's eyes opened suddenly, wide with panic. She tried to sit up, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. "Where am I? What's happening?" "You're safe," Jack said, keeping his voice low and steady. He took a step back, not wanting to crowd her. "I'm Jack. I found you on the road near my garage. You're at my house now." Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the simple furniture, the stack of old car magazines on the coffee table, the faded family photos on the wall. Some of the tension left her shoulders, but fear still lined her face. "I need to clean those cuts," Jack said, gesturing to her arms. "Will you let me help you?" Bella nodded slowly, wincing as she settled back against the pillow. Jack retrieved his first aid kit from the bathroom, military grade, old habit, and returned to find her watching him warily. As he began cleaning the scrapes on her arms, he noticed more bruises, some older than others. His jaw tightened, but he kept his movements gentle and his expression neutral. The silence in the room was heavy with unspoken questions. Jack could feel the weight of whatever trouble had brought this young woman to his doorstep. But for now he focused on the task at hand, keeping her safe and tending to her wounds. Jack reached for a glass in his kitchen cabinet, his weathered hands steady as he filled it with cool water. The tap's quiet rushing was the only sound in the house besides Bella's occasional shaky breaths from the living room. He grabbed a clean dish towel, dampened it slightly, and returned to where she sat, huddled on his couch. "Here," he said softly, offering her the glass. "Small sips." Bella's fingers trembled as she took the water. Her knuckles were white against the clear glass, and she brought it to her lips carefully, as if every movement caused her pain. Jack noticed how her eyes kept darting to the windows, checking the darkness beyond. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice rough. She pressed the cool cloth to her face, wincing slightly as it touched the bruise on her cheek. Jack stood, his tall frame casting a shadow in the dim room. "I'm going to fix you something warm to eat. You need your strength." He kept his voice gentle, the way he might speak to a frightened animal. In the kitchen, he moved with purpose, pulling out a can of soup and a loaf of bread. The familiar motions of cooking helped calm his racing thoughts. Who had hurt this girl? What kind of trouble was she in? The soldier in him stayed alert, listening for any unusual sounds outside while he worked. The soup began to steam, filling the kitchen with a homey aroma. He heard movement and turned to find Bella standing in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. She looked small and lost in the kitchen's fluorescent light. "I shouldn't be here," she said, but made no move to leave. "I'm putting you in danger just by staying." Jack stirred the soup slowly. "Why don't you sit down and tell me what's going on? I can't help if I don't know what we're dealing with." Bella sank into one of the kitchen chairs, her shoulders hunched. "His name is Derek," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "We dated for 8 months. At first he was charming. Perfect, even." She paused, twisting her hands in her lap. "But then he changed. Or maybe he just stopped pretending." Jack placed a bowl of soup in front of her, along with some buttered bread. He sat down across from her, giving her space but staying close enough to show he was listening. "He wouldn't let me see my friends, checked my phone, got angry over little things." Bella's voice cracked. "When I finally tried to leave him, he—" She touched her bruised cheek unconsciously. "He said he'd never let me go, that I belonged to him." Jack's hands clenched under the table, but he kept his face neutral. "Has he been following you?" Bella nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I thought I lost him today, but then I saw his car. I ran through the woods near your garage. I must have fallen. Everything after that is fuzzy." She looked up at Jack, fear plain on her face. "I don't know where to go. My family, they don't understand. They think he's from a good family, that I'm being dramatic." Jack watched her, feeling the weight of the decision before him. His quiet life, his carefully maintained solitude, all of it would be disrupted if he helped her. But looking at her bruised face, hearing the terror in her voice, he knew he couldn't turn her away. Still, a lifetime of caution made him wonder just how dangerous this situation might become. Jack's heavy boots thudded against the wooden floor as he paced back and forth in his living room. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking each passing minute that brought them closer to potential trouble. He ran his hand through his gray hair, his mind racing through their limited options. Through the doorway, he could see Bella curled up on his worn leather armchair, her eyes fixed on the window. She hadn't moved much since finishing her soup, except to occasionally peek through the curtains at the dark street outside. "The police might already be looking for you," Jack said quietly, stopping his pacing. "Your family's bound to notice you're missing." Bella wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "I can't go back," she whispered. "Not yet. Please don't make me go back." Jack's weathered face softened at her plea. The protective instinct that had served him well in the Marines stirred in his chest. "I won't make you do anything you don't want to do," he assured her, "but we need a plan." He walked to the kitchen window, scanning the quiet street outside. The streetlights cast long shadows across his front yard, and every passing car made him tense. His thoughts drifted to his medical cabinet upstairs. Basic supplies that could help with Bella's bruises, but nothing that could heal the fear in her eyes. "Try to rest," he told her. "You're safe here for now. I'm going to step outside for a minute, clear my head." Bella nodded, though her fingers gripped the armchair tighter. Jack grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door and stepped out onto his front porch. The cool night air filled his lungs as he tried to think through their situation. Inside, Bella slowly uncurled herself from the chair. Her legs were stiff, and her body ached from her earlier fall. She spotted her purse where Jack had placed it on the coffee table and reached for it, wincing at the movement. As she dug through her belongings, checking what she had with her, an envelope fell onto the floor. The crisp paper bore her family's letterhead, something she'd stuffed in her purse days ago, but hadn't had the courage to read. With trembling fingers, she opened the letter. Her mother's elegant handwriting filled the page. "Bella, Your father and I are deeply disappointed in your recent behavior. Breaking things off with Derek was incredibly short-sighted. His family's position in the community could have secured your future. These ridiculous accusations about his temper are beneath you. He's simply passionate and protective. We raised you to be better than this kind of drama. Until you come to your senses and apologize to Derek and his family, we feel it's best if you don't attend any family functions. We won't have you embarrassing us further. Think carefully about your choices. Mother. Bella's hands shook as tears blurred her vision. Through the window, she could see Jack's broad silhouette on the porch, still scanning the street. She watched as he turned and came back inside, his face etched with concern as he noticed the letter in her hands. "I found this," she said, her voice breaking as she held out the letter. "It's from my mother." Jack took the paper, his expression darkening as he read. His jaw clenched, and Bella could see the muscles working in his face as he processed her family's words. The morning sun cast long shadows across Jack's driveway as he worked under the hood of his old pickup truck. His hands moved with practiced ease, checking belts and hoses, though his mind kept drifting to Bella sleeping in his spare room upstairs. The letter from her family had revealed more than just their disappointment. It had shown him the cage they'd built around her. Grease stained his weathered hands as he reached for a wrench. The quiet morning felt almost normal, like any other day he'd spent tinkering with engines, but the weight of responsibility sat heavy on his shoulders. A sharp knock at his front door broke through his thoughts. Jack straightened up slowly, wiping his hands on an old rag. Through the morning haze, he could make out two uniformed figures standing on his porch. His heart thumped harder, but years of military training kept his expression neutral. He took his time walking to the door, using those precious seconds to steady himself. Opening it revealed two local police officers, Officer Martinez, a woman he recognized from town, and her partner, a younger man he didn't know. "Morning, Jack," Officer Martinez said, her tone professional but friendly. "Mind if we ask you a few questions?" Jack leaned against the doorframe, deliberately casual. "What's on your mind?" The younger officer pulled out a notepad. "We're looking into a missing person case. Bella Monroe. Her family reported her missing yesterday evening." "They're quite worried," Martinez added, studying Jack's face. "You haven't seen her around, have you?" Jack crossed his arms, his expression unchanging. "Can't say that I have. Don't usually mix with the Monroe crowd." He gestured to his grease-stained clothes and the modest house behind him. "Different circles, you know?" "Her family mentioned she might be in some kind of trouble," the young officer pressed. "If you do see her, I'll be sure to let you know," Jack cut in, his voice firm but not hostile. Officer Martinez's eyes swept past him into the house. "You mind if we take a look around? Just to be thorough?" "Actually, I do mind," Jack replied, straightening up to his full height. "Unless you've got a warrant, I'd rather keep my privacy. Been living quiet out here for years, as you know, Martinez." The officers exchanged glances. Martinez nodded slowly. "All right, Jack, but if you hear anything..." She handed him her card. "Call us immediately. And Jack?" Her voice took on a warning tone. "Don't get involved in anything you shouldn't. The Monroes have a lot of influence in this town." "Noted," Jack said simply, taking the card. He watched them walk back to their patrol car, maintaining his relaxed posture until they drove away. Only then did he let out a long breath and close the door. Turning around, he found Bella standing at the bottom of the stairs, her face pale. She'd heard everything. "They'll be back," she whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. Jack walked over to her, his steps heavy but determined. "Probably," he agreed. "But you're safe here, Bella. I promise you that." "Why?" Her voice cracked. "Why would you risk helping me? You heard them. My family has influence." Jack's weathered face softened as he looked at her. Because sometimes doing what's right means standing up to people with influence, and I've never been good at backing down from a fight worth fighting. The morning sun filtered through the dusty windows of Jack's garage, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Bella stood next to an old Chevy, her sleeves rolled up and dark smudges of grease on her hands. She watched intently as Jack's weathered fingers pointed out the different parts of the engine. "See this here?" Jack's deep voice was gentle as he showed her a worn belt. "When it gets loose like this, you'll hear a squealing sound. That's how you know it needs replacing." Bella nodded, her eyes bright with interest. The familiar sense of oil and metal filled the air, and somehow they made her feel safe. It had been 3 days since the police visit, and while fear still lingered in the back of her mind, working in the garage helped keep those thoughts at bay. "Can I try?" she asked, reaching for the wrench. Jack handed it over, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Remember what I showed you. Steady pressure, but don't force it." Her hands were smaller than his, more delicate, but she worked with determination. The bolt loosened under her careful attention, just as Jack had taught her. A sense of accomplishment washed over her as the old belt came free. "Well done," Jack said, and Bella couldn't help but beam at the pride in his voice. It was something she'd rarely heard from her own father, who had always been more concerned with her appearance at charity galas than her actual achievements. They worked side by side through the morning, Bella asking questions and Jack answering with patience. The simple rhythm of the work, the turning of wrenches, the careful inspection of parts, the satisfaction of fixing something broken, brought her a peace she hadn't known she was missing. During their lunch break, they sat on old chairs just outside the garage door, eating sandwiches Jack had packed. Bella watched a bird hop across the driveway, gathering bits of string for its nest. "I never thought I'd enjoy something like this," she admitted softly. "My family would be horrified to see me covered in grease, working with my hands." Jack set down his sandwich, studying her face. "What would make them happy, Bella?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Perfect makeup, designer clothes, marrying someone from the right family." Her voice grew quiet. "Even if that someone hurt me." "And what would make you happy?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that before. Bella looked down at her grease-stained hands, then around at the garage that had become a sanctuary. "This," she whispered, "being able to learn something real, something useful, not having to pretend all the time." Her voice cracked. "But I'm scared, Jack. They'll never let me live my own life. They'll find me, try to force me back into their world. They never cared what I wanted, only how I made them look." Jack set his lunch aside and turned to face her fully. His eyes, usually stern, held a gentleness that made her throat tight with emotion. "Listen to me, Bella," he said, his voice firm but kind. "You're not their property. You're not here to fulfill their expectations or maintain their image. You deserve to live for yourself, to find what makes you happy and pursue it." The afternoon sun hung low in the sky, painting everything in warm shades of orange and red. Jack and Bella sat on the worn wooden steps of his front porch, their shoulders nearly touching as they watched the day fade. The air was cooling, bringing with it the sweet scent of nearby pine trees and the distant sound of crickets beginning their evening song. Bella wrapped her arms around herself, more from uncertainty than the chill in the air. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she spoke. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, running away from everything I've ever known." Jack shifted slightly, his weathered hands clasped together as he listened. The dying sunlight caught the silver in his hair, making it glow like polished metal. "My mother used to say appearances were everything," Bella continued, staring at the horizon. Every dinner party, every charity event, every social gathering, it was all about showing the world how perfect we were. She let out a bitter laugh. But behind closed doors, we barely spoke to each other. Dad was always working, Mom was always planning the next big event, and I was just a prop in their perfect family picture. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying away her words. Jack remained silent, giving her the space to let out what she'd been holding inside for so long. "When I met Richard," she said, referring to her ex-boyfriend, "they were so happy. He came from the right family, had the right connections. They didn't see, or maybe they didn't want to see, how he treated me behind closed doors." Her voice cracked slightly. The constant criticism, the way he'd get angry over the smallest things, how he'd make me feel worthless. Jack's jaw tightened, his hands clenching involuntarily at the mention of her ex. But he kept his voice gentle when he spoke. "You don't owe them your life, Bella." "I know that now," she said, turning to look at him. "Being here, learning to work with my hands, feeling useful for the first time in my life, it's shown me what real living feels like." She paused, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. "But they'll never understand that. To them, this kind of life is beneath us. They'll never accept my choices." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across Jack's property. In the distance, a dog barked, and somewhere nearby, a screen door slammed. "You know what scares me the most?" Bella's voice had grown softer. "The thought of going back to that empty life, of being trapped in their world again, where nothing I do or say matters as long as it looks good from the outside." Jack turned to her, his expression serious but kind. He opened his mouth to speak, to offer some words of comfort, but the sound of tires on gravel cut through the peaceful evening air. A sleek black car was pulling into his driveway, its polished surface reflecting the sunset like a mirror. Bella's face went pale. That's my father's car." Jack stood up slowly, his body tensing as he watched not just one, but two more vehicles pull in behind the first. From the lead car emerged a tall, distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit, flanked by several broad-shouldered men in dark clothing. Security guards, their stances professional but menacing. Jack's heart began to race as he positioned himself slightly in front of Bella, every muscle in his body ready for whatever might come next. The evening air crackled with tension as Bella's father strode across the gravel driveway. His expensive Italian leather shoes crunched on the loose stones, each step deliberate and commanding. The setting sun cast long shadows behind him and his security detail, making them appear even more imposing against the darkening sky. "Isabella?" Her father's voice cut through the silence, sharp and cold as steel. "This little adventure of yours ends now." He stopped a few yards from the porch, adjusting his gold cufflinks with practiced precision. His gray eyes, so similar to Bella's yet devoid of her warmth, fixed on Jack with barely concealed disdain. Jack didn't move from his protective stance in front of Bella. His military training kicked in automatically, feet planted firmly, shoulders squared, hands relaxed but ready. He'd faced worse odds in combat. But this was different. This wasn't about survival. It was about protecting someone who'd found sanctuary under his roof. "Mr. Monroe." Jack's voice was calm but firm. "Bella's not going anywhere she doesn't want to." The security guards, 3 of them, all wearing identical black suits and earpieces, shifted their positions slightly, spreading out in a practiced formation. Their hands hovered near their jackets, though Jack doubted they were armed. This was meant to be intimidation, not violence. "This doesn't concern you," Mr. Monroe said, his lip curling slightly. "My daughter needs to come home where she belongs, among her own kind." His eyes swept over Jack's tattoos, his work-worn clothes, the modest house behind him. Not here. Bella's fingers gripped the back of Jack's shirt, and he could feel her trembling. But there was strength in her grip, too. The kind that comes from finally finding your footing after being knocked down too many times. Sir, Jack's voice carried the authority of his years in the Marines. I suggest you listen to what your daughter wants for once. The security guards took a step forward, but Mr. Monroe held up his hand, stopping them. His face flushed with anger. Listen to me very carefully, he said, his voice dropping dangerously low. You have no idea what you're involving yourself in. Isabella has obligations, responsibilities. There are arrangements that— Arrangements? Bella's voice suddenly rang out, clear and strong. She stepped out from behind Jack, her chin lifted high despite her shaking hands. You mean the arrangement you made with Richard's family? The one where you ignored every sign that he was hurting me because it was good for business? Mr. Monroe's facade cracked slightly. Isabella, you're being dramatic. Richard comes from an excellent family, whatever problems you two had. No, Bella cut him off. She moved forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Jack now. I'm not being dramatic. For the first time in my life, I'm being honest. I won't go back to that life, Dad. I won't go back to being your perfect daughter who sits quietly at charity events and pretends everything is fine while she's dying inside. Her father's face hardened. Security, he barked, and the three men started forward. Jack raised his hand, his presence suddenly filling the space between them. The guards hesitated, reading the warning in his stance, the promise of resistance in his eyes. I mean it, Dad. Bella's voice was steady now, stronger than she'd ever been. I choose my freedom. I choose to live my own life, not the one you planned for me. The crunch of tires on gravel faded into the distance as Mr. Monroe's black car disappeared down the road. Bella stood frozen on the porch, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. The setting sun painted the sky in deep purples and oranges, but she didn't seem to notice its beauty. Her legs began to shake, and Jack quickly guided her to the old wooden bench on the porch. She collapsed onto it, her face crumpling as the weight of what had just happened crashed over her. What have I done? Her voice came out in a broken whisper. I've never stood up to him like that before. Her hands trembled as she covered her face, tears slipping between her fingers. They're my family, Jack. My own family, and I just— Jack sat down beside her, the old bench creaking under his weight. He stayed quiet for a moment, giving her space to let it all out. The crickets had started their evening song, a gentle backdrop to Bella's soft sobs. You know, he said finally, his voice gentle, sometimes the hardest choices we make are the right ones. He looked out at the darkening yard, his eyes distant. When I was in the Marines, I had to make decisions that kept me up at night. Life or death choices that would haunt me either way. Bella lowered her hands, looking at him through tear-filled eyes. Jack rarely talked about his time in service. There was this one night in Afghanistan, he continued, his voice low and thoughtful. My unit had to choose between following orders or saving civilians who'd gotten caught in the crossfire. We chose the civilians. He paused, rubbing his weathered hands together. Command wasn't happy, but I've never regretted it. Sometimes doing the right thing means going against what others expect of you. But the guilt, Bella whispered, wiping her eyes. I feel like I'm being selfish, ungrateful. They gave me everything. Money, education, opportunities. Everything except what you needed most, Jack said softly. Love without conditions. The freedom to be yourself. Fresh tears spilled down Bella's cheeks. But these were different, like relief, like truth finally breaking free. I don't want to go back, she said, her voice stronger now. I can't be that person anymore. The one who just smiles and nods and lets them control everything. Then don't, Jack said simply. But where will I go? What will I do? The fear crept back into her voice. Jack turned to face her fully. You can stay here as long as you need. We'll figure it out together. He gestured to his modest home. It's not much, but it's safe. And you can learn more about fixing cars, he added with a small smile. You're actually pretty good at it. Bella looked at the house. Really looked at it. The worn paint, the slightly crooked shutters, the garden tools scattered near the steps. It wasn't anything like her family's mansion, but somehow it felt more like home than that grand house ever had. I want to try, she said slowly, straightening her shoulders. I want to build something new, something that's mine. She met Jack's eyes, her own still damp but determined. Even if it terrifies me, even if they never understand. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. They sat in comfortable silence as the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, the weight of the decision settling around them like a familiar blanket. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window as Bella washed the breakfast dishes. Her hands moved mechanically through the warm, soapy water, while her eyes kept drifting to the road outside. Another unfamiliar car, this one dark blue, crawled past Jack's house, moving slower than normal traffic should. Jack noticed it too. He stood at the kitchen counter, pretending to read the newspaper but watching the car through the window. His jaw tightened as the vehicle disappeared around the bend. That's the third one today, Bella said quietly, her hands trembling slightly as she dried a plate. Could be nothing, Jack replied, but his tone wasn't convincing. He'd been extra vigilant lately, checking the locks twice before bed and keeping the porch lights on all night. Bella put the dish down and gripped the edge of the sink. I keep seeing them everywhere now. Dark cars, tinted windows, driving so slow. Her knuckles went white from holding the counter too tight. Jack folded his newspaper and moved closer, his presence solid and reassuring. Hey, look at me. He waited until she met his eyes. Nobody's getting past me, understand? This is my home, and you're safe here. Bella nodded, but her shoulders remained tense. She jumped at every sound, the creaking of the old house, branches scratching against windows, cars on the distant highway. The peace she'd found in the garage, learning about engines and tools, seemed to be slipping away. Later that morning, Jack grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. I need to pick up some supplies in town. We're running low on everything. He hesitated, watching Bella's face pale slightly. I'll only be gone an hour, tops. You okay here? Yes, Bella said quickly, maybe too quickly. I'm fine. I'll work on that carburetor you showed me yesterday. Jack studied her for a moment longer. Keep the doors locked. Don't answer for anyone. He patted his pocket where his cell phone sat. Call if you need anything. And I mean anything. After Jack's truck rumbled away, Bella tried to focus on the carburetor sitting on the kitchen table. She'd spread newspapers underneath it and had her tools laid out just like Jack had taught her. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking, and every little noise made her heart race. The phone rang, making her jump so hard she knocked a wrench to the floor. She stared at the landline on the wall, her breath catching in her throat. Jack never got calls on his home phone. Everyone used his cell or contacted him at the garage. The ringing continued, sharp and demanding in the quiet house. Bella's feet moved without her permission, drawn to the sound. Her hand reached for the receiver, even as her mind screamed at her to leave it alone. Hello, her voice came out as a whisper. Did you really think you could hide from me forever? The voice hit her like ice water. Her ex-boyfriend's smooth, controlled tone, the one he used right before things got bad. The one that still haunted her nightmares. She couldn't form words, couldn't breathe. I know exactly where you are, Bella. He paused, letting the words sink in. That old Marine can't protect you forever. Come back now, or things will get very unpleasant. Bella slammed the phone down, her whole body shaking. She backed away from it like it might bite her, bumping into the kitchen table and sending the carburetor crashing to the floor. Oil spread across the linoleum like a dark stain, but she barely noticed. He knew where she was. He'd found her. Bella was still shaking when Jack's truck pulled into the driveway an hour later. She heard his heavy boots on the porch steps and rushed to unlock the door, nearly colliding with him as he entered. Whoa, easy there. Jack steadied her with his strong hands, but his expression darkened when he saw her face. What happened? She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop trembling. He called. My ex. He knows where I am. He said... Her voice cracked. He said you can't protect me forever. Jack's jaw clenched. He set down his grocery bags and guided her to sit at the kitchen table. The spilled oil from the carburetor was still there, a dark reminder of her panic. Tell me everything. As Bella recounted the phone call, Jack's expression grew more serious. He ran a hand through his gray hair, his eyes scanning the windows, taking in their vulnerability. The small house suddenly felt exposed, like a target in the open. We need to leave, he said finally. This place isn't safe anymore. He stood up and started pacing, his military training kicking in. I've got a friend who owns a cabin up north, remote, off the grid. We can lay low there until we figure out our next move. Leave? Bella looked around the kitchen, at the tools scattered across the table, the coffee mug she'd been using every morning. This place had become her sanctuary. But your garage, your home? Just things, Jack interrupted gently. Things can be replaced. You can't. He checked his watch. Pack light, only what you absolutely need. I've got some cash stored away, and we'll take the back roads. Bella nodded, pushing down her guilt at uprooting Jack's life. She hurried to the spare room that had become hers, grabbing the backpack she'd arrived with. Her hands moved quickly, stuffing in clothes and the few possessions she'd accumulated during her stay. In the garage, Jack was loading supplies into his old truck. Tools, a first aid kit, bottles of water. His movements were precise, efficient, like he'd done this before. Maybe he had, in another life, in places far from here. The cabin's about 6 hours north, he explained as he worked. We'll need to stay off the main highways. Your ex probably has friends watching the obvious routes. Bella helped him load the last of their supplies, trying to focus on the task rather than her fear. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant to bring all this trouble to your door. Jack paused in his work, turning to face her. His weathered face softened. Listen to me. Sometimes the right thing comes with trouble. Doesn't make it any less right. He squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. Now, help me grab the rest of the... The sound of tires on gravel cut him off. Bella's heart stopped. Through the small garage window, she could see a black sedan pulling up to the house. The same car her ex-boyfriend always drove, polished to a mirror shine that reflected the afternoon sun. He's here, she breathed, the words barely a whisper. Her legs felt weak, memories of pain and fear flooding back. Jack, he's here. Jack's old truck rumbled down the winding back roads, kicking up dust in the fading light. Bella kept glancing in the side mirror, watching for headlights behind them. Her heart hadn't stopped racing since they'd made their escape through the back of Jack's property, leaving her ex-boyfriend searching the empty house. Try to rest, Jack said, his voice gentle but firm. We've got a long drive ahead. Bella nodded but couldn't relax. The leather seat creaked as she shifted position. How did you know about that trail behind your house? Former Marine, Jack replied, his eyes scanning the road ahead. Always good to have an escape route. He turned down another unmarked road, the truck's headlights cutting through the growing darkness. These old logging roads aren't on any maps. Your ex won't find us out here. The trees grew thicker as they drove deeper into the wilderness. Bella watched them pass by, their shadows dancing in the moonlight. The forest seemed to swallow them up, hiding them from the world they'd left behind. I used to come up here hunting, Jack continued, breaking the silence. Before Sarah, my wife, passed. Haven't been back in years. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. Never thought I'd need it like this. They drove for hours, taking turns that seemed random to Bella, but clearly meant something to Jack. The truck's engine was the only sound besides the crunch of gravel under the tires. Every now and then, Jack would slow down, checking landmarks only he could recognize. Almost there, he said, as they turned onto an overgrown path. Branches scraped against the truck's sides. Cabin's just up ahead. The path opened into a small clearing, and there it was, a modest log cabin, weathered but solid. Jack parked the truck close to the door and killed the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy. Wait here, he said, grabbing a flashlight from under the seat. He did a quick check of the perimeter, his movements precise and careful. Bella watched him through the windshield, grateful for his protection, but hating that he had to do this at all. All clear, he called softly. Bella grabbed her backpack and hurried to join him on the porch. Jack worked the old lock, which protested but eventually gave way. The cabin smelled of wood and memories. Jack's flashlight beam revealed a simple interior, a main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, and 2 doors that probably led to bedrooms. Dust covered everything, but the furniture was sturdy and practical. It's not much, Jack said, finding some old emergency candles in a drawer. He lit them, casting a warm glow around the room. But we'll be safe here for now. Bella set her bag down and helped Jack bring in their supplies. Each trip to the truck, she scanned the darkness beyond the clearing, but there was only the whisper of wind through trees. They worked together to make the cabin livable, shaking out blankets and wiping down surfaces. Jack checked the old generator out back, and soon they had some basic power. The well pump still worked, delivering cold, clean water. But even as they settled in, Bella could feel the weight of their situation. They were hiding, running from people who wouldn't give up easily. She saw it in the way Jack double-checked the locks, in how he positioned himself near windows, in the gun he kept within reach. Still, for the moment, they had found a refuge. The cabin stood quiet and strong around them, offering shelter in more ways than one. Bella sat on the old couch, wrapped in a blanket, while Jack got a small fire going in the fireplace. The flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, and despite everything, she felt safer than she had in days. The morning sun filtered through the cabin's dusty windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Jack stood at the small kitchen counter, brewing coffee in an old percolator he'd found in one of the cabinets. The familiar aroma filled the space, making the cabin feel more like home with each passing day. Bella emerged from her room, her hair tied back in a messy ponytail. She'd been sleeping better lately, the dark circles under her eyes gradually fading. "Something smells good," she said, accepting the steaming mug Jack offered her. They fell into an easy routine over the next few days. Jack taught Bella how to fish in the nearby stream, showing her how to tie knots and cast her line with patience. She was a quick learner, her face lighting up with pride when she caught her first trout. "My dad never took me fishing," she said one afternoon, watching her line drift in the clear water. "He was always too busy with work." Jack nodded, understanding the weight behind her words. Sometimes the simplest things mean the most. They worked together to fix up the cabin, cleaning years of dust and neglect away. Bella discovered she had a talent for organization, transforming the cluttered space into something comfortable and welcoming. Jack repaired loose boards and fixed leaky pipes, his hands remembering skills he hadn't used in years. The physical work helped them both sleep better at night. During the day, they kept busy enough to push away thoughts of what they'd left behind. But in the evenings, when the work was done and dinner was cleared away, they found themselves talking more openly. One night, as they sat by the crackling fireplace, Bella wrapped herself in a worn quilt and watched the flames dance. The cabin was quiet except for the pop of burning wood and the distant call of an owl. "Jack," she said softly, "what do you want out of life?" He looked up from where he sat in his old armchair, surprise crossing his weathered features. "Been a long time since anyone asked me that." "Well, I'm asking now." Jack was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. "Used to want a lot of things. Family, purpose, after Sarah died." He trailed off, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "Guess I stopped wanting anything. Figured it was easier that way." "To give up on happiness?" Bella's voice was gentle but firm. "To give up on expectations," he corrected. "Can't be disappointed if you don't hope for anything." Bella shifted on the couch, leaning forward. "That's not living, Jack. That's just existing." She met his gaze steadily. "You taught me that I deserve better than what my family wanted for me. Maybe it's time you learned the same lesson." Jack's expression softened, touched by her concern. "You sound pretty sure about that." "I am," Bella said. "The man who saved me, who's protecting me now, he deserves to be happy too. You can't tell me to fight for my future while you've given up on yours." The fire crackled between them, throwing warm light across their faces. Jack sat quietly, absorbing her words. For the first time in years, he felt something stir in his heart. A small spark of possibility he thought he'd lost long ago. The morning started like any other at the cabin. Jack was fixing a loose board on the front porch, while Bella prepared lunch inside. The rumble of the old mail truck caught their attention as it made its way up the dirt road, a rare occurrence this far out. "Mail's here," Jack called through the screen door. He walked down to meet the carrier, collecting a single envelope. His heart sank when he saw the return address. "Bella, it's from your family." Bella stepped onto the porch, wiping her hands on her jeans. Her face paled at the sight of the cream-colored envelope with its fancy letterhead. "How did they find us?" "Your father probably has connections at the post office," Jack said, handing her the letter. "Do you want to read it?" Bella's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. She sat down on the porch steps, and Jack settled beside her, close enough to offer support, but giving her space to process whatever the letter contained. "Dear Isabella," she began reading aloud, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "Your continued absence has become a source of great embarrassment to this family. We've invested too much in your future to let you throw it all away now." She paused, taking a deep breath. Jack's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. "Marcus has been most understanding about your behavior," she continued, referring to her ex-boyfriend. "He assures us that once you return, he will help maintain our arrangement with his father's company. The merger would secure our position in the community and ensure our family's legacy." Bella's voice cracked. "We've worked too hard building these connections to let your selfishness destroy everything. Marcus comes from the right kind of family, and his father's influence in the business world would be invaluable to us. Whatever grievances you think you have with him are insignificant compared to what this means for the family." Jack watched as tears began rolling down her cheeks, but she pressed on. Your father has already discussed the wedding plans with Marcus's parents. Everything has been arranged. It's time to stop this childish rebellion and come home. We expect you to do what's right for this family." The letter fell from Bella's hands, landing in the dirt at her feet. She sat in stunned silence, her whole body shaking. "They knew," she whispered. "They knew what he was doing to me, and they didn't care. They were going to make me marry him anyway." Jack placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Bella." She stood up suddenly, anger replacing the shock in her eyes. "All those times I called them for help, all those bruises I couldn't hide, they saw everything and still pushed me toward him. Because it was good for business? Some people care more about money than their own flesh and blood," Jack said softly. "But that's their shame to carry, not yours." Bella picked up the letter and tore it into tiny pieces, letting them scatter in the morning breeze. "I won't go back," she declared, her voice growing stronger. "I won't let them control my life anymore. I'd rather have nothing than be sold off like some company asset." Jack stood up beside her. "You've got more strength in you than they ever gave you credit for, and you deserve so much better than what they tried to force on you." Bella wiped her eyes, standing straighter. "Thank you, Jack, for showing me what real family should look like." The evening air carried a gentle chill as Jack and Bella sat on the cabin's weathered porch. Stars dotted the clear sky above them, and crickets filled the silence with their steady chirping. Jack handed Bella a steaming mug of coffee, and she wrapped her fingers around it gratefully. "Can't sleep?" he asked, settling into the wooden chair beside her. Bella shook her head. "Too many thoughts after that letter." She took a sip of coffee and turned to look at him. "Tell me about your time in the service. You never really talk about it." Jack was quiet for a long moment, his hands clasped around his own mug. "It feels like another lifetime now," he finally said. "I was young, thought I could save the world." He gave a small, sad laugh. "Met Sarah there. She was an army nurse. Prettiest smile I'd ever seen." Bella watched his face soften at the memory. "How long were you married?" 3 years. Not nearly long enough." Jack's voice grew heavy. "She was stationed at a field hospital when it got hit. I was deployed elsewhere, couldn't get to her in time." He cleared his throat. "After that, I couldn't stay in. Took my discharge and opened the garage. Figured fixing things might help me feel useful again." "I'm so sorry, Jack," Bella said softly, reaching over to touch his arm. He covered her hand with his own. "What about you? What were you like before all this?" Bella pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. "I don't even know anymore. My whole life was about being what my parents wanted, the perfect daughter, the perfect society girl. I can't remember the last time I made a decision for myself before running away." "Must have been lonely," Jack observed. "It was. They sent me to all the right schools, bought me all the right clothes, introduced me to all the right people. But they never asked what I wanted." She wiped at a tear. "When I told them I wanted to study art, they laughed it off, said it wasn't practical. When Marcus started..." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "When he started hurting me, they told me relationships take work." Jack's hand tightened on his mug. "You deserved better than that." "You know what's funny?" Bella turned to face him. "I feel more like myself in these past few weeks, hiding out in this cabin, than I ever did in my whole life back there." Their eyes met in the darkness, and something shifted in the air between them. Jack set his mug down and reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Bella leaned into his touch, her heart beating faster. Slowly, Jack leaned forward. His lips met hers in a gentle kiss, soft and questioning. Bella responded, her hand coming up to rest on his chest. For a moment, the world seemed to stop, filled only with the warmth of their connection and the sound of crickets in the distance. When they pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. Jack rested his forehead against hers, then slowly sat back. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Maybe we shouldn't—" "No, don't apologize," Bella said quickly. "It's just, we both need time," Jack finished for her. "Time to heal." Bella nodded, grateful he understood. The kiss had awakened something in her, hope, possibility, but she knew they were both carrying too many wounds to rush into anything. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, each lost in thoughts of healing, of time, and of the unexpected comfort they'd found in each other. Morning sunlight streamed through the cabin's dusty windows as Bella stood at the kitchen sink, absently washing breakfast dishes. Her mind kept wandering back to last night's kiss, but it also drifted to the letter from her family. The familiar weight of guilt settled in her chest. Jack watched her from the doorway, noticing how her movements had slowed, her shoulders tense. "Penny for your thoughts?" Bella jumped slightly, then offered him a weak smile. "Just thinking about my family." She set down a plate and gripped the edge of the sink. "I keep wondering if I'm doing the right thing. They raised me, gave me everything I needed." "Everything except love and understanding," Jack said quietly, moving to stand beside her. "I know, but—" Bella wiped her hands on a dish towel. "They're still my family. What if I'm being selfish? Maybe if I just talked to them." "Bella." Jack's voice was firm but gentle. He turned her to face him, his hands resting on her shoulders. "They knew what Marcus was doing to you. They chose their social standing over your safety." Tears welled up in Bella's eyes. "But they're all I have." "That's not true anymore." Jack's eyes softened. "And you don't owe them anything. Not your happiness, not your safety, not your future." Bella leaned against the counter, wrapping her arms around herself. "I've never stood up to them before. I always did what they wanted. The right schools, the right friends, the right boyfriend." She laughed bitterly. "Look how well that turned out." "You're stronger than you think." Jack reached out and squeezed her hand. "I've seen it every day since you've been here. The way you're learning to trust yourself, to make your own choices." "Sometimes I feel strong," Bella admitted. "But then I remember their faces when I told them no, and I feel like that scared little girl again." Jack pulled her into a gentle hug. "That scared little girl survived everything they put her through. She got herself out. She's not little anymore, and she's not alone." Bella melted into his embrace, letting his words sink in. The steady beat of his heart against her ear grounded her, reminding her that she had found something real here, something true. After a moment, she pulled back and wiped her eyes. "Thank you, Jack, for everything." He smiled, then glanced at his watch. "I need to head into town for supplies. We're running low on just about everything." "I could come with you," Bella offered, but Jack shook his head. "Better if you stay here. Less chance of being seen." He grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. "I'll be back in a couple of hours. Lock up behind me." After Jack left, Bella wandered to the porch with a book, trying to lose herself in its pages. The morning was peaceful, with only the sound of birds and rustling leaves to keep her company. A flash of movement caught her eye. She looked up, her heart stopping as she spotted a car partially hidden among the trees at the edge of the property. It was a black Mercedes, Marcus's car. Her hands began to shake as she watched him step out of the vehicle, his familiar figure moving with purpose toward the cabin. Bella's heart thundered in her chest as she watched Marcus emerge from his car. His confident stride, the way he adjusted his expensive suit jacket. It was all exactly as she remembered. Panic seized her throat as memories of his abuse flooded back. Without thinking, she bolted from the porch. The screen door slammed behind her as she ran toward the dense forest behind the cabin. Branches whipped at her face, but she didn't slow down. The soft earth absorbed the sound of her footsteps as she pushed deeper into the woods. Jack's truck rumbled up the dirt road just as Bella disappeared into the tree line. He slammed on the brakes when he spotted the black Mercedes. Through the windshield, he saw Marcus approaching the cabin, his expression dark and determined. "Bella!" Jack called out, leaping from his truck. His eyes scanned the area frantically until he caught a glimpse of her blue shirt through the trees. Without hesitation, he sprinted after her, his military training kicking in as he moved swiftly and quietly through the underbrush. Bella ran until her lungs burned. She ducked behind a large oak tree, pressing her back against its rough bark. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to control her ragged breathing. The forest was quiet, except for the pounding of her heart and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. "Bella!" Jack's whisper carried through the trees. She whipped her head around to see him crouching low, moving carefully toward her. Relief flooded through her body at the sight of him. Jack reached her in seconds, immediately pulling her close. "I've got you," he murmured, his voice steady and reassuring. "You're safe." "He found us," Bella choked out, clutching Jack's shirt. "How did he find us?" "Shh." Jack guided her deeper into the woods, away from the cabin. They moved silently until they reached a dense thicket of bushes. Jack helped Bella crouch down behind them, positioning himself between her and the direction they'd come from. "I'm so sorry," Bella whispered, her voice trembling. "I should have stayed inside, locked the doors." "No," Jack cut her off firmly. "You did exactly what you should have done. You got yourself to safety." His eyes were fierce as he looked at her. "I won't let him hurt you again, Bella. Not ever." They heard branches snapping in the distance, footsteps approaching. Bella tensed, but Jack's hand found hers, squeezing gently. His touch anchored her, helping her stay calm despite her fear. "Listen to me," Jack whispered, his face close to hers. "Whatever happens, whatever he says or does, I'm not going anywhere. You're not alone anymore." His eyes held hers, steady and determined. "We'll face this together, understand? No more running." Bella nodded, drawing strength from his words. For the first time since she'd spotted Marcus's car, she felt something besides fear. She felt protected, supported, loved. Jack's presence beside her was like a shield, and she knew with absolute certainty that he meant every word. "I won't let him control my life anymore," she whispered back, her voice growing stronger. "I won't let any of them control me." Jack smiled, pride evident in his expression. "That's my girl." He shifted slightly, positioning himself more protectively in front of her as the footsteps grew closer. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." "Jack? You out here, buddy?" A hushed voice carried through the trees. Jack's body tensed, but then his eyes widened with recognition. He knew that voice. "Mike," he whispered back, careful to keep his voice low. Through the dense foliage, a figure in camouflage gear emerged. Mike Thompson moved with the practiced stealth of a veteran, his movements precise and controlled. His weathered face broke into a relieved smile when he spotted Jack and Bella hiding behind the thicket. "Thank God I found you first," Mike said, crouching down beside them. His eyes darted back toward the cabin. "We need to talk, but not here. Follow me." Jack helped Bella to her feet, keeping hold of her hand as they followed Mike deeper into the woods. The former Marine led them to a small clearing surrounded by thick pines, far enough from the cabin that they couldn't hear Marcus anymore. "How did you find us?" Jack asked, positioning himself protectively near Bella. Mike ran a hand through his graying hair. Been keeping tabs on you since I heard about the situation. Called in some favors. Tracked you to the cabin. He turned his attention to Bella, his expression grave. Miss Monroe, you're in more danger than you realize. Bella's grip on Jack's hand tightened. What do you mean? Your ex-boyfriend, Marcus Wellington, Mike said, pulling out a small notebook from his pocket. He's not just some rich kid with anger issues. My contacts in law enforcement have been building a case against him for months. He's connected to the Riverside Syndicate. Jack's face darkened. The Riverside Syndicate was a notorious criminal organization that had been growing in power over the past few years. The abuse, the controlling behavior, it wasn't just about you, Mike continued, his voice gentle but urgent. He was grooming you, your family's connections, their influence. The syndicate wanted to use that. Bella's face paled. My father, did he know? We're not sure, Mike admitted, but Marcus isn't going to let you go easily. You know too much, even if you don't realize it yet. Jack stepped forward. What are we dealing with here, Mike? Give it to me straight. They've got people everywhere, police, local government, business. This cabin won't stay safe for long. Mike pulled out a map. You need to leave. Tonight. Get as far away from here as possible. Jack nodded, his military training kicking in as he began formulating a plan. We'll need supplies, documentation. Already taken care of, Mike interrupted, pulling out an envelope. New IDs, credit cards, everything you need to disappear. I've got a car stashed about 2 miles north of here. Clean plates, no GPS. Bella looked between the two men, her voice shaky but determined. Where will we go? The less I know, the better, Mike said. But Jack knows some places, don't you, buddy? Places from our old days? Jack nodded slowly, memories of safe houses and hidden routes flooding back from his time in service. Yeah, I know a few spots they won't think to look. Mike checked his watch. Marcus brought 3 men with him. They're searching the cabin now, but they'll start combing these woods soon. You need to move. Jack took the envelope from Mike, quickly checking its contents. Thank you, brother. I owe you. Just keep her safe, Mike replied. And Jack, watch your 6. These aren't amateurs we're dealing with. Bella stepped forward and hugged Mike tightly. Thank you, she whispered. Mike pulled back, giving them both a serious look. There's a storm coming. You two need to be long gone before it hits. The moonlight filtered through the dense canopy of trees as Jack and Bella walked in silence, following Mike's directions north. The weight of their situation hung heavy in the cool night air. After about 20 minutes of careful hiking, Jack gestured to a fallen log, and they both sat down to catch their breath. Bella wrapped her arms around herself, her voice barely above a whisper. What are we going to do, Jack? Jack pulled out the envelope Mike had given them, his weathered hands carefully examining the new IDs and documents inside. We can't keep running and hiding forever, he said, his voice gentle but firm. These people, the syndicate, they've got resources we can't match. I never thought my life would turn into this, Bella admitted, watching as an owl swooped silently between the trees. Sometimes I wonder if I should just go back, face whatever comes. Jack turned to her, his eyes intense in the dim light. That's not an option. You heard Mike. They were using you, planning to use your family's connections. Going back would only put you in more danger. Bella nodded slowly, picking up a small twig and breaking it between her fingers. So what's the alternative? We leave, Jack said, spreading out the map Mike had given them. We head west, maybe up into the mountains first. I know some places where we can lay low for a while. Then when things cool down, we find somewhere new to settle, somewhere they won't think to look. Start over? Bella asked. And for the first time that night, there was a hint of hope in her voice. Complete fresh start, Jack confirmed. New names, new town, new life. It won't be easy at first, but we can make it work. Bella was quiet for a moment, processing everything. What about your garage? Your home? Jack's face softened. Home isn't just a place, Bella. Sometimes it's about who you're with. He paused, then added, Besides, I can fix cars anywhere. A small smile crossed Bella's face. And I'm getting pretty good at it too, thanks to you. That you are, Jack agreed, returning her smile. We could open a new shop somewhere, build something together. Bella stood up, walking a few steps away. She looked up at the stars peeking through the trees, thinking about everything she was leaving behind, her family's wealth, their social status, the life they had planned for her. But as she thought about it, she realized those things had never truly been hers. They were chains disguised as privileges, keeping her trapped in a life she never chose. You know what? She said, turning back to Jack. I'm ready to leave it all behind. Jack stood up, joining her. You sure about this? It's a big step. I've never been more sure of anything, Bella said firmly. That life, the one my parents wanted for me, it was never real. It was all about appearances, about what other people thought. For the first time, I feel like I can actually be myself. She reached out and took Jack's hand, squeezing it gently. I want to build something real, something that's mine, even if we have to start from nothing. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. Then we better get moving. That car Mike mentioned should be about a mile ahead. Bella took one last look at the dark woods around them, at the life she was leaving behind. In her mind, she said goodbye to the perfect daughter her parents had tried to mold her into, to the society parties and fake smiles, to the gilded cage that had been her world for so long. I promise, she whispered to herself. Whatever comes next, it'll be on my terms. The pre-dawn light cast long shadows through the trees as Jack and Bella made their way back to the cabin. They moved quietly, staying alert for any signs of danger. The old wooden structure stood silent against the pale sky, looking somehow smaller and more fragile than before. We'll need to travel light, Jack whispered as they approached the cabin's back door. Just essentials. Inside, Bella gathered her few belongings while Jack collected supplies. She folded the worn flannel shirt he'd given her that first night at his house, tucking it carefully into a small backpack. Her fingers brushed against the silver locket her grandmother had given her, the only piece of jewelry she'd kept from her old life. Jack moved efficiently around the cabin, his military training evident in his organized approach. He packed basic tools, first aid supplies, and enough non-perishable food to last them a few days. His movements were precise, but gentle, trying not to make any noise that might carry through the still morning air. Got everything? He asked, zipping up his duffel bag. Bella nodded, shouldering her backpack. Just need one more thing. She walked to the small desk where she'd been writing in a journal during their stay. Picking up a pen, she wrote a quick note. Dear Mom and Dad, I'm okay. I'm safe. Please don't look for me. I love you, but I need to live my own life now. She left the note on the kitchen table, weighted down with a coffee mug. It felt strange, reducing years of complicated family history to just a few lines, but anything more would have been too painful. Jack checked his watch. Sun's coming up soon. We should move. They stepped outside, where the morning air was crisp and clean. Birds were beginning to wake, their songs filling the forest with life. Jack secured their bags in the trunk of the car Mike had left them, an older model sedan, nothing flashy that would draw attention. Bella stood for a moment, taking in the cabin one last time. This place had been their sanctuary, where she'd learned to trust again, where she'd found the strength to choose her own path. The wooden walls held memories of late-night conversations, of laughter over failed attempts at cooking, of quiet moments when words weren't needed. "You okay?" Jack asked softly, standing beside her. "Yeah," she replied, surprised to find she meant it. "Just saying goodbye." The rising sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold as they got into the car. Jack started the engine, the sound seeming unusually loud in the peaceful morning. As they pulled away from the cabin, Bella watched it grow smaller in the side mirror. She thought about everything she was leaving behind: the perfectly manicured lawns of her family's estate, the carefully planned parties, the weight of expectations that had always pressed down on her shoulders. But she also thought about what lay ahead: freedom, authenticity, the chance to build something real. The cabin disappeared from view as they turned onto the main road. Bella felt something shift inside her, like a knot finally coming loose. She reached over and took Jack's hand, feeling the roughness of his palm against hers. "Ready?" he asked, glancing at her. Bella smiled, watching the sun rise over the trees. "Ready," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The road stretched out before them, leading somewhere new, somewhere they could start fresh. For the first time in her life, uncertainty felt like freedom. The small town of Cedar Grove welcomed them with little fanfare. It was exactly what they needed: a quiet place where faces didn't draw too much attention, where people minded their own business. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks brushing against cotton-white clouds, creating a peaceful backdrop to their fresh start. Jack pulled their car into the driveway of a modest rental house. The white paint was slightly faded, and the front porch had a gentle slope to it. But to Bella, it looked perfect. Yellow daffodils pushed through the soil in the front garden, their cheerful faces turned toward the spring sunshine. "Home sweet home," Jack said, cutting the engine. His voice carried a warmth she'd grown to love during their time together. They'd found the place through one of Jack's old military buddies who lived in the area. The house sat on the outskirts of town, close enough to be convenient, but far enough to maintain their privacy. The nearest neighbor was just visible through a stand of pine trees. Inside, their footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors. The previous owners had left behind some basic furniture: a worn couch, a kitchen table with 4 mismatched chairs, and a bed in the main bedroom. Bella ran her hand along the kitchen counter, feeling the smooth surface beneath her fingertips. "The garage needs work," Jack mentioned, glancing through the kitchen window at the detached building. "But I can fix it up, make it into a proper shop." He'd already lined up work at the local auto repair shop. The owner, an older man named Tom, had been impressed by Jack's experience and hired him on the spot. It wasn't as independent as running his own shop, but it was a start. Bella unpacked their few belongings, arranging them carefully in their new space. She placed her grandmother's locket in the drawer of the bedside table, tucking it safely away. The morning light streamed through the windows, casting warm patches on the floor where dust motes danced in the air. "I saw a help wanted sign at the library in town," she said, folding one of Jack's shirts. "I thought I might apply." Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. They both knew she needed something of her own, a way to build an identity separate from her past. The kitchen needed cleaning, but Bella found comfort in the simple task. She wiped down counters and shelves, imagining future meals cooked here, quiet mornings with coffee, evenings spent talking about their days. Normal things. Safe things. Through the window, she watched Jack inspect the garage, his tall frame moving with purpose as he made mental notes of what needed fixing. He'd changed too during their time together, the hard edges of his grief softening just a bit. Later that afternoon, they walked into town together, getting a feel for their new home. The main street was lined with brick buildings, their storefronts neat and well-maintained. People nodded hello as they passed, but no one stared or asked questions. When they returned home, Bella stood in the middle of their living room, taking it all in. The house creaked slightly as it settled, a homey sound that made her smile. Sunlight slanted through the windows, warming the space and highlighting the possibilities that lay before them. Here, she wasn't the wealthy family's rebellious daughter. She wasn't anyone's victim. She was just Bella, free to become whoever she wanted to be. The realization spread through her chest like warmth, and her smile grew wider, more genuine than it had been in years. For the first time since they'd left the cabin, her shoulders relaxed completely. They were safe. They were free. They were home. Spring blossomed into summer, and with it came new purpose. The community center stood like a beacon of hope on Cedar Grove's main street, its red brick walls weathered but strong. Bella walked through its doors each morning with determination in her step, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The center was a patchwork of programs and services, food drives, counseling sessions, and support groups. But it was the women's shelter program that called to her most. She remembered those first terrifying days after escaping her ex-boyfriend, the uncertainty that had clouded every decision. Now she could be the helping hand she'd needed back then. Today, she sat across from Sarah, a young mother who reminded her so much of herself 6 months ago. Sarah's hands trembled as she cradled a cup of coffee, her eyes darting toward the door every few minutes. "You're safe here," Bella said softly, sliding a box of tissues across the table. "I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you are." Sarah dabbed at her eyes. "How did you do it? How did you start over?" Bella thought about Jack, about that first night when he'd found her on the road. "Someone believed in me," she answered, "and slowly I learned to believe in myself too." The community center hummed with activity around them. In one corner, children played, while their mothers attended job training classes. Down the hall, volunteers sorted through donated clothes and supplies. Bella had helped organize much of this, drawing from her own experience to create programs that truly served those in need. She'd started small, first as a volunteer at the front desk, then helping with paperwork and organization. But her natural ability to connect with others, especially those who'd experienced abuse, quickly became apparent. The center director had taken notice, giving her more responsibilities and encouraging her to develop new initiatives. "I never thought I'd be strong enough," Sarah whispered, echoing Bella's own past doubts. "Strength isn't about never being afraid," Bella replied, remembering Jack's words to her. "It's about moving forward anyway." Throughout the day, Bella moved between different roles, counseling newcomers, coordinating with local shelters, and leading a support group session. Each interaction reinforced what she'd come to understand. Her past hadn't broken her. It had prepared her to help others heal. During the afternoon support group, she watched as women shared their stories, their voices growing stronger with each telling. Some were like her, escaping abusive relationships. Others were rebuilding after different hardships. But they all carried the same spark of hope, the same determination to reclaim their lives. Near the end of her shift, as she organized files in the office, she heard familiar footsteps in the doorway. Jack stood there, his work clothes still carrying the scent of motor oil from the garage. His eyes held pride as he watched her in her element, surrounded by the evidence of lives being rebuilt. She'd found her calling here, among these stories of survival and renewal. The wealthy family's daughter who'd once lived to please others had become a woman who helped others find their own strength. The irony wasn't lost on her, how running away had finally led her home. Jack leaned against the doorframe, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He didn't need to say anything. His presence was enough. He'd seen her transformation from the beginning, had protected her while she learned to protect herself. Now he watched as she extended that same care to others, creating ripples of healing that spread far beyond their small town. The evening sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, casting long shadows across their front porch. Jack and Bella sat side by side on the weathered wooden swing, its gentle creaking a peaceful accompaniment to the chorus of crickets beginning their nightly song. Bella leaned her head against Jack's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. His arm wrapped around her, protective yet gentle. The summer breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine from the garden they'd planted together, a small symbol of their new roots in this place. "Remember that first night?" Bella asked softly, watching a pair of cardinals flit between the trees. "When you found me on the road?" Jack's hand tightened slightly on her shoulder. "Like it was yesterday," he replied, his voice low and gravelly. "Scared the life out of me, seeing you there." "I was so afraid then," she mused, threading her fingers through his. "Of everything. My family, my ex, even my own shadow." She paused, taking in the peaceful scene before them. Their modest home, the flourishing garden, the quiet street where neighbors waved hello instead of watching with suspicion. Jack shifted slightly, the swing swaying with his movement. "You're not that same scared girl anymore," he said, pride evident in his voice. "Haven't been for a long time." Bella smiled, thinking about her day at the community center, about the women she'd helped, the lives she'd touched. "No, I'm not," she agreed. "And you're not the same lonely mechanic either." The sky deepened to purple as the sun continued its descent. A few early stars peeked through the darkening canvas above them. The temperature dropped slightly, bringing with it the comfort of a summer evening. "You know," Jack said, his voice thoughtful, "I spent years thinking I was done. After losing Sarah, my wife, I figured that was it for me. Just fix cars until I couldn't anymore." He turned to look at Bella, his eyes soft in the fading light. "Never thought I'd find something worth fighting for again." Bella reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his jaw. The rough stubble beneath her fingers was familiar now. Comforting. "We saved each other," she said simply. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness settled around them. The streetlights flickered on one by one, creating pools of warm light along their quiet street. A car passed by slowly, its driver raising a hand in greeting. "Sometimes I still can't believe we made it," Bella admitted. "That we're really free." Jack straightened up, turning to face her fully. His eyes, usually guarded, were open and sincere. "We did make it," he said firmly. "And whatever comes next, whatever life throws at us, we'll face it together." He squeezed her hand gently. "That's a promise." Bella felt tears prick at her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness or fear. They were tears of gratitude, of joy, of finally belonging somewhere, with someone who saw her for who she truly was. The last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, leaving them in the gentle embrace of twilight. Their porch swing continued its gentle motion, marking time in its own peaceful way. Jack and Bella sat together, hands clasped, watching as stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky above their home. Bella stirred awake to the cheerful melody of songbirds. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the handmade quilt covering her bed. For a moment, she lay still, letting the peaceful morning sounds wash over her. The familiar creaks of their modest house, the distant rustle of leaves in the breeze, and the gentle ticking of the old clock in the hallway, all blended into a symphony of home. She stretched, feeling truly rested for the first time in what seemed like forever. Gone were the nightmares that used to plague her sleep, the constant fear that had been her companion for so long. In their place was a deep sense of security, of finally belonging somewhere. The aroma of fresh coffee drifted up from the kitchen below. Jack was already up, she knew. He still kept to his military schedule, rising with the sun. Bella smiled, remembering how he'd adapted his routine to include making her morning coffee just the way she liked it. Padding downstairs in her soft slippers, Bella found Jack at the kitchen table, reading the morning paper. He looked up as she entered, his weathered face softening into a smile that still made her heart skip a beat. "Morning, sunshine," he said, pushing a steaming mug toward her. "Morning," she replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. The kitchen was warm and bright, morning light spilling across the worn linoleum floor. Their small herb garden was visible through the window above the sink, the plants swaying gently in the morning breeze. Jack folded his newspaper and set it aside. "Thought we might take a walk later," he suggested. "Weather's perfect for it." Bella nodded, sipping her coffee. These quiet moments were precious to her now. No pressure, no expectations, just the simple pleasure of sharing space with someone who truly cared about her well-being. The day passed peacefully, filled with small tasks and quiet conversations. As evening approached, they set out for their walk, hand in hand down the quiet street. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of gold and pink, casting long shadows before them. Their footsteps fell into an easy rhythm as they walked. The air was sweet with the scent of summer flowers, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees lining the road. Houses they passed showed signs of life within, warm lights in windows, the sound of children's laughter, the distant bark of a dog. Jack's hand was warm and strong around Bella's, his presence beside her as steady as ever. She thought about how far they'd come, how different their lives were now from when they'd first met. The fear and uncertainty that had marked their early days together had transformed into something beautiful and lasting. They walked in comfortable silence, their shadows stretching out behind them as the sun continued its descent. The sky deepened to rich purple at the edges, while brilliant orange still painted the horizon. Birds called their evening songs from the trees, and the first crickets began their nightly chorus. The road ahead stretched peaceful and quiet before them. Bella squeezed Jack's hand, feeling the answering pressure of his grip. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever life had in store for them, they would face it together. That knowledge filled her with a quiet joy, a certainty that had been hard-won, but was now unshakable. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story, and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.